What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Today we have our updated March Madness Bracketology predictions. This is where we take a quick look at Joe Lunardi's recent Bracketology, which came out today, January 21st, and we look at it, we copy it, and put it into our PDF and fill it out from the first round all the way to the national championship based on who I think would win the NCAA tournament if it started today. And we do these about once a week or so. And yeah, it's one of our favorite series to do here on the channel. And we do a ton of other college basketball content here on the channel as well. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys haven't already. And without further ado, I'm ready to fill out this bracket. So I'll go through, and as we talk about these games as well, I'll talk about if I think a team should be higher seeded, lower seeded, or, a couple of these teams I might not think deserve to be in the NCAA tournament at all. And real quick, before we start filling it out, I know that this is has a 2022 Final Four logo on it and the 2022 March Madness logo on it, but I know it's 2025 right now. We're just using this template. These teams are all the teams that are in Joe Lunardi's Bracketology. So this is based on this year. It is just a template format that we use to fill it out. I get that comment a couple of times every time I do these videos. I know it's 2025, just a template. So first matchup, our top overall seed, still the Auburn Tigers, and they will be going up against 16-seeded Colgate, the toothpaste. Auburn is going to brush their teeth with them and throw them away. And that shouldn't be a hard game at all. Janai Broome should be back and healthy from his ankle sprain by the time of the tournament. And even without him, I think that they would run numbers on this Colgate team. The Patriot League this year is not that great. Colgate probably is the best team out of that league. Them or Bucknell, who are already 1-1 against each other on the season. And both of them are barely above 500. I think they're both like 10-10-ish, somewhere around there, like 9-10 or 10-9. They're both not that good, but that's about the best you're going to get out of the Patriot League. So I don't think, they don't stand much of a chance. Utah State versus UCLA. UCLA just hasn't been great lately, but they do have a pretty decent defense. I just don't trust them when they come to March Madness. They've been too inconsistent. Utah State has had a couple of bad games, but I feel like they're more consistent. I'm going to take them over UCLA here in this 8-9 matchup. Next up, we have Texas A&M as our 5 seed going up against McNeese State as our 12 seed. I really like Texas A&M. I think that they are probably maybe the best 5 seed on here. I'll have to, look over it real quick, but I think that they're really good. And they just recently fell to a 5 seed, but that's because they lost a couple of games without Wade Taylor. They're going to have Wade Taylor back. He's their best player. I think that this Texas A&M team is built for March, and they're going to be going up against in the second round another team that I really do think is built for March Madness, and we're going to talk about it because this matchup is going to be key. Houston and Samford. I actually really do like Samford, but unfortunately they get a tough draw here with the Houston Cougars. I think Houston is another team that is built for March, and I've been kind of thinking in my own head like the last couple of weeks, maybe even to the last month, Texas A&M and Houston. If any team from Texas is going to make the Final Four, it's going to be one of these two teams. I could maybe see a sleeper team like Texas Tech, but Texas A&M and Houston, one of these teams maybe might make the Final Four given the right draw. These are two teams out of the state of Texas that I believe can get there. And they'll be going up against each other in the second round. I do like Samford. I hate the draw for them, though. I hate the draw for them. Arizona as our 6th seed going up against either Pitt or Nebraska. I am going to take Nebraska to defeat Pitt. Pitt is on a terrible losing streak right now and looks awful. So I'm not sure what happened there because they do have a really solid team. They just have not been playing good lately. So I'm going to take Nebraska in that one, but I am going to take a team that is pretty hot right now, even though they did lose one to Texas Tech on the road recently. Before that, they were looking really good. And Texas Tech on the road, that's a tough place to play. I don't fault Arizona for that. They're a really hot team right now. I'm going to take them to win here in this round. Then we got Kentucky versus Northern Colorado. I've been wanting to be pretty high on Kentucky. I feel like they're one of the more not controversial, but rangy teams. Like some people think that they can go all the way to the Final Four. Some people think they're going to lose in the first weekend of the tournament. So they're pretty rangy, especially for a 3 seed. Some people say that they could lose early, and I do like Northern Colorado, but I think they have some of these guys that are just going to be really good in March. I mean, you look at Lamont Butler, as a guy who hit a buzzer beater to win the game in the national, or not in the national championship, to go to the national championship for San Diego State against FAU. He hit the shot that took them from the Final Four to the championship just a couple years ago. They have a guy, Jackson Robinson, that I think is a guy that's kind of built for March. He's a Swiss Army knife type of player who's going to do anything for Mark Pope in that offense. He came over from BYU with Mark Pope. Very solid player. And Kobe Brea. Kobe Brea is a guy who can light it up. And he could be, one of those shooters in March Madness that go, crazy, get hot at the right time, and can lead his team on a deep run. So that's why I cannot pick Northern Colorado. As much as I wanted to take that upset, I thought about it. But the more and more I think about these Kentucky players, I think that they have the playmakers and the shot makers to be able to at least get past the first round of this tournament. Next up, we do have Missouri versus North Carolina. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there are some teams that I just don't believe deserve a spot in this bracketology, and one of those teams is North Carolina. I don't think that they should be in the tournament, let alone a 10 seed if they are going to be in. I think that they should be in the last four in and be in the play-in game. I don't think that they've done anything too special this year to deserve a spot, and I'm not going to pick them, especially over Mizzou, who Missouri is playing fantastic right now. One of the hottest teams in the country. They beat Florida on the road recently. That is 100 times better than any win North Carolina's gotten this year. So Missouri, and they also beat Kansas this year. Two very solid wins, and they're hot right now. Give me Missouri. They got some good players on that team who I feel like are built for March. And I know North Carolina has some solid guards, but I don't know if they have the defense, the consistency. It's just not there. Even the games that they've been winning lately, even though they just lost to Stanford, even the games that they've been winning recently have been just by the skin of their teeth, man. They're barely getting by. I'm going to take Missouri here. Purdue versus Cleveland State. I will take Purdue here in this matchup over Cleveland State. Purdue is another team that is just really hot right now, and if they can continue, if they get hot at the right time, they could definitely make a run at least to the Sweet 16, Elite 8 this year in March Madness. Braden Smith is one of the best playmaking point guards in the entire country. Next up, we do have on the round of 32. We'll go ahead and finish this region just so we can stay talking about these teams before we move on to a whole new region. Auburn and Utah State. I am going to take Auburn to the Sweet 16. I don't think Utah State has enough to compete with them. They might be able to keep it close throughout the game a little bit, but I think Auburn is going to go on a run and pull away at some point in the game and never look back. Texas A&M and Houston, Battle of Texas. I mentioned both these teams I do really like a lot. I could see both of these teams go on a pretty decent run, and I kind of want to go with Texas A&M here. I think Wade Taylor is that type of leader. I think Houston is really going to miss Jamal Shead this year, and I know Milos Uzan has done a pretty decent job at point guard for Houston so far, but I think that Texas A&M, they have that guy in Wade Taylor, who is going to be that leader, who is going to be that point guard, who is going to get them over this hump. It is going to be a close game. It is going to be a fantastic game, but I like Texas A&M here in this one. And we have a SEC battle in the Sweet 16 there between Auburn and Texas A&M. Arizona versus Kentucky. That's a tough one. I could see Kentucky going on a deep run, but Arizona is a really good team who is getting hot right now. And I really do like KJ Lewis. He has been playing a lot better recently. I think he is the X factor for this Arizona team. I just don't know if Arizona has anyone that can really compete with the likes of Kobe Brea if he gets hot. That is a guy that Arizona is going to have to clamp down on, and that opens up so much more for this Kentucky offense. And you think between Andrew Carr as well, I mentioned Jackson Robinson, Ortega Owe. I mean, all these guys can shoot as well, which is just absurd. They have so many shooters on this team. I think through the first weekend of March Madness, Kentucky is going to be a very hot team, and they're going to fly to the Sweet 16. Next up, we have Missouri. Couldn't decide if I want to say Mizzou or Missouri. Missouri versus Purdue. And I kind of want to go with the upset here. I mean, Missouri's been playing really good lately. I really want to pull the trigger on it because that would make for a cool storyline. I do think that Missouri can beat Purdue. I think it would be a good game. Purdue would definitely be the favorite. They probably have more talent, but I am going to go with Missouri. It causes for an interesting storyline here in this region because it is a all SEC Elite 8 here, or Sweet 16 here, and guarantees at the Sweet 16 that the SEC team will be in the Final Four out of this region. Pretty interesting how that worked out there. But yeah, we have 4 SEC teams making the Sweet 16 out of this region. So our first matchup, we do have Auburn versus Texas A&M. This is to go to the Elite 8, and I have, in every one of my bracket predictions I've done so far this season, I've had Auburn in my Final Four, and I think that you have to have them at least in the Elite 8 the way, or at least in the Sweet 16 the way that they have been playing. But I want to switch things up a little bit, and I do like this Texas A&M team a lot. I know that they've taken a couple of recent losses, but that is without Wade Taylor, and really Phelps has stepped up a lot in those games for Texas A&M and really kind of been that guy. Now they have 2 guys, and Henry Coleman's a guy that I think is going to take a step up in March Madness, be a rebounding machine. And if he can play good defense without fouling, do not get into foul trouble against Jedi Broom, I think this Texas A&M team could match up pretty decently with Auburn. And I am going to take the Aggies to get it done and move on to the Elite 8. And move on to the Elite 8 over the top overall seed Auburn Tigers here in this one. And I know Auburn fans, I've had you guys in the Final Four, like all my March Madness predictions. I want to switch it up a little bit here. This isn't just because Jani Broom is hurt. I love your team. Tahad Pettiford is a great freshman. Chad Baker Mazzara, some really good players. Miles Kelly is a great shooter that if he can get hot, Auburn is also going to be very hard to stop at all the way to the championship. Auburn is the favorite to win the national championship. I will not deny that. I think so too, but upsets happen. I think Texas A&M could be a Final Four team. I'm going to take Texas A&M here in this one. Next up, we got Kentucky versus Missouri. And I kind of want to go with another upset. I mean, Caleb Grill, Tamar Bates are guys that I think are kind of built for March Madness. But I think Sweet 16 might be where their road comes to an end. And I am going to take the Kentucky Wildcats here in this one to beat Missouri. Just all those great players on that team. They can all shoot. They can score with Missouri. Even when Missouri makes runs, I think Kentucky is going to answer those runs, and they could put up close to 90, 100 points. We've seen them do that plenty of times so far this year. So now to make it to the Final Four, we have Texas A&M versus Kentucky. This would be a battle, but I'm going to go with my gut here. I think Texas A&M is a huge-time sleeper to make the Final Four this year, and I'm going to take them to get it done, man. I'm going to take them out of this tough region here, getting by 2 top-tier SEC teams in Auburn and Kentucky, beating Houston along the way as well. That's a hard road, but Texas A&M gets it done. I really do think Henry Coleman is an underrated player that you wouldn't see from just watching the stats. I think he's going to be, a big-time player for this team come March Madness and kind of break out. And I think Phelps, Wade Taylor is an elite guard duo that not a lot of people are talking about. They have guys like Garcia, who were there last year, who hit a big shot in March Madness. So that is going to be very key to have those guys with experience as well. Texas A&M makes it out of this, 4 bracket Sweet 16 SEC battle here, and makes it to the Final Four. That was a fun one, a fun region there. Let's go over this bottom right region, actually. Mix it up a little bit, because this is going to be a very fun region for me, because I see a ton of upset potential in this region. So we're going to have some fun with this one because a lot of teams in here that I could see slipping up come March Madness time. Alabama versus Omaha. Now, Alabama's not one of those teams. I'm going to take Alabama in that one easily to win over Omaha. Next up, we got Texas Tech versus St. Mary's. I think this would be a gritty, tough 8-9 matchup, probably down to a wire, probably down to maybe even a buzzer beater. I'm going to go with Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is pretty underrated. Hopefully for their case, they can get to at least a 7, maybe even a 6 seed by the time we get to March Madness, because I think they're starting to heat up right now. But between JT Toppin down low, some pretty good underrated guard play, I think Texas Tech, and Williams down low too, excellent front court. I think Texas Tech is super underrated. They'll get by St. Mary's there. Next up, we got Memphis versus Bradley, and we're going to take our first double-digit seed. I don't think we took a double-digit seed to win in the first round of that. No, we did not. So, yeah, this is going to be our first double-digit seed to get a round 1 win, and that is going to be Bradley. I really do think Bradley is a team that is built for March. We'll just see if they can get over the hump of beating Drake in the Missouri Valley Conference. If they can do that in the Missouri Valley Conference Championship, and some other great teams in there as well, like Northern Iowa and Belmont, I really do think that Bradley will be primed to win a game in March Madness, especially with a matchup like Memphis. We've seen Memphis slip up against some lesser teams that they were supposed to beat before, like Arkansas State, like more recently Temple. I do think that Memphis has potential to at least make the Sweet 16, maybe even the Final Four with the right draw. But between their elite backcourt of Haggerty and Hunter, and then Colby Rogers, who is an excellent shooter. If Colby Rogers is hot, if Tyrese Hunter is knocking down his threes, you know what you're going to get 20 points per game at least from PJ Haggerty. If Dane Danger's working down low in the post, I really do think that this Memphis team could go on a run, but we've seen them slip up before. I'm going to have them slip up here to Bradley because Bradley is a team that you can't slip up against and you can't underestimate, or they will take the game from you. Next up, we got Illinois versus Middle Tennessee State. I debated taking Middle Tennessee State here too, but I am going to take Illinois. They're too good. I mean, it took Kasparis. I don't like to pronounce his last name because I always butcher it. Hakaitis. I just call him Hakaitis. But he fouled out of that Michigan State game. They were still really in that Michigan State game on the road. That was pretty impressive to me, honestly. I think Illinois is a great team who has potential to make a run and go to the Final Four. But I did consider taking Middle Tennessee State because I've kind of been on the Middle Tennessee State wagon for a little bit recently, and you'd see that if you watch my bracketologies. And I was good. It was nice to see Joe Lunardi have Middle Tennessee State in his bracketology because I do think that there is a world that they get the bid out of the Conference USA over a team like Liberty. Even though Liberty is a really good team, and they're probably going to be a 12 seed if they do win the Conference USA, I think Middle Tennessee State's a sleeper, and I saw it early on in the season. So I considered taking them for that reason, but if they got a better matchup. I don't like them against Illinois. I think Illinois is going to be too good for them, too tough, too strong. And they were in the Elite Eight last year. They want to build off that, at least get to the next second round. So let's go with Illinois there in that one. Next up, we got Louisville over Central Florida or Indiana. I think whoever wins that game, I'm going to go with Louisville. I think with Chucky Hepburn, they've been a pretty good team. Like, I know that they did lose Pryor, because on Pryor to injury for the year, I am going to go with Central Florida over Indiana for that game. But I don't think Central Florida or Indiana is primed for March Madness this year. I think Indiana has all the talent, but they just, I don't know. I just can't get behind them. They're just too inconsistent. Too inconsistent to play for me. They have guys that should be able to shoot the ball. I don't know if shooting threes is necessarily their problem. They got some sort of issue that I just can't put my finger on. Don't trust them. Don't trust them. Bottom line, don't trust them. Louisville, though, Chucky Hepburn, they got guys that are good shooters around him as well. And he's a guy who wants to win. He's a winner. They're going to get to the round of 32 here. Marquette versus Charleston. I really do like Marquette. Even though they did just lose at home to Xavier, I could see Marquette going on a really deep run, but I say that kind of every year. And for me, the problem with Marquette is Cam Jones. As much as I love to watch him play, and I think he's a superstar, sometimes he has to realize it's his time to shine, and he's got to take over games. And I haven't seen that very often from him this year. I think ever since the Maryland game where they won early on in the season against Maryland, I haven't really seen him take over. He wants to be a playmaker, and that's great. He is a great playmaker for his teammates, but sometimes he has to take the shots. That has been my biggest, critique to Marquette so far this year, is Cam Jones is an excellent player. He needs to take over himself sometimes, and I really like this Charleston team, man. I really like this Charleston team, and I'm going to do it. It's going to be my biggest upset so far. 14 seed over a 3 seed. Give me the Charleston to upset Marquette 14 over 3 here in the first round. Next up, we do have Gonzaga versus Oklahoma, and both these teams just aren't playing good. And I'm going to say this right now. Gonzaga as a 7 seed is outrageous. Probably my least favorite thing about this bracketology. I'm not going to hate on Joe Lunardi, though, but sometimes, you got to stop riding these, big-time programs like Gonzaga, because they've been god-awful lately. They don't deserve a 7 seed. If it was a team like, who's our other 7 seed? Clemson lost 2 games in a row this year, or 2 games in a row this week, they'd be down to at least a 10 or 11 seed, if not out of the tournament. So for Gonzaga to still be a 7 after going 0-2 last week to Santa Clara and Oregon State, it's just pitiful, and I had to get that out. But I am going to take Gonzaga over Oklahoma because there's probably one team that has been more pitiful than Gonzaga lately. It's been Oklahoma. So they kind of catch a break there. But Gonzaga has all the tools. I get it. They have the talent on paper. They have the coach that's been there so many years in a row. But you can't just reward the team. You got to base things off this year only. And if they might have the talent on paper, but they haven't been getting the results in the games. So I am going to take Gonzaga though over Oklahoma because they do have the team. Ryan Nembhard, excellent point guard. They have good defense. They have an amazing front court. I'm going to take Gonzaga in that one. And Kansas, UNC, Asheville. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take UNC Asheville. UNC Asheville has been in the mix of making the tournament, getting in there for the last couple of years. Well-coached team. Give me UNC Asheville to upset Kansas 15 over 2. I know that is bold. I haven't been as impressed with Kansas this year. I think that they are way more, one-dimensional than we thought this year. We thought that they were going to have all these great scorers and stuff on their team, but really it's been Zeke Mayo and Hunter Dickinson. DeJuan Harris is still a good playmaker, but, DeJuan Harris is still, a good playmaker and stuff, but he's just not helping in the scoring department. Zeke Mayo can score. Hunter Dickinson can score. Guys like A.J. Storr and Rylan Griffin have been non-existent transfer additions for them. It's just been really tough for Kansas this year. They're just not the team that we expected them to be. And I think they're overseeded as a 2 seed. I should mention that as well. Speaking of, hopping on these big brand teams, there's no way you can sit here and tell me that Kansas deserves a 2 seed at this point. It's just not. There's no way. So give me UNC Asheville to get it done there in that game. Next up, we got Alabama versus Texas Tech, and I'm going to go with Alabama here to win. I think Texas Tech does have the team that they could maybe compete with Alabama. And I kind of wanted to think about taking Texas Tech, but I am going to go with Alabama just because they're really good. Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, these are guys that have been in the Final Four last year. Knows what it takes to get it done. Their transfer addition in Cliff Amorie and also Chris Youngblood have been major helps for them. They got a guy in Philon who's an excellent freshman, one of the more underrated freshmen in the league. Give me Alabama to move on. Next up, we got Bradley versus Illinois. And I really wanted to go with Bradley here. I really do like their team. A really undersized point guard who's like he's got to be 5'10" or under. Like he's not 6 foot tall. He is a shorter point guard named Duke Dean, who is really fun to watch. I just think Illinois is too good, and I'm going to take Illinois to get it done here in this one. Next up, we got Louisville versus Charleston, and this is actually kind of a tough game here because as much as I do like this Louisville team, I do think that Kason Pryor might be a big loss here in this game. They would need him for this game specifically because Charleston has shown me some potential throughout this season so far. I remember they went to double overtime with FAU and won in a very, very high-scoring game. It's super entertaining. But they have a center. I believe his name is Ante Bezovic. He's European from somewhere up in there, but from overseas, but very good player. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's the next Nikola Jokic or anything, but he can score, rebound, and play make as a center. I think he can be very dangerous against a team like Louisville, and I'm going to take the dangerous Charleston team here to get it done and defeat Louisville here in this one. Next up, we do have Gonzaga versus UNC Asheville. And I could see UNC Asheville, getting it done. This is the same weekend as the first round. You get a little bit of momentum. You pull off a historic upset over the Kansas Jayhawks. And UNC Asheville actually has some really good players on this team. They have, I know they have a guy named Marsh, who is all around super good guard. And I believe they have like 3 guys who average above 15 points per game. So that could be huge, but I think Gonzaga's size might be a little bit too much for him here, and I will take Gonzaga. Even though I hate how highly seeded Gonzaga is, they kind of get blessed with this draw right here. So I'm going to take Gonzaga to the Sweet 16. Mark Few makes his however many straight Sweet 16s in a row, which if they don't get it together, that may not happen. He might not even make the tournament. So look out for that. But given this blessed draw for Gonzaga, I have them in the Sweet 16. Then we have Alabama versus Illinois. And this could go either way, honestly. I mean, Illinois has a ton of really good players that can compete and score with Alabama. I think Grant Nelson is the X factor here, and I think that he is going to perform. I love Grant Nelson. I think he's super fun to watch. His passing ability whenever he gets into the lane is elite, and he's sneaky athletic as a forward as well. He can do it all. He wants to win. Give me Alabama to the Elite Eight. Then we got Charleston versus Gonzaga. This is where I'm going to have Gonzaga's run to come to an end. They have a really good front court, and they actually match up really well with Charleston, but for a team that's overseeded to me, I just don't feel right. I don't want to take them any further than Sweet 16. And I like Cinderella, so I want to see Charleston get another win, get to the Elite Eight, have that my Cinderella as a 14 seed to the Elite Eight there. But I will talk about Gonzaga does match up really well with Charleston, even though I do think that if Gonzaga got past Charleston, I think Alabama would destroy them at this point. But like I said, Gonzaga has a really good front court. They could match up with Ante Brovic there and be able to slow him down. So I do like that matchup for them, but I'm going to take Charleston to the Elite Eight. And then I will take Alabama. I don't think Charleston will beat Alabama, especially after already pulling off an upset over Louisville and Gonzaga. I think that's where Charleston's run comes to an end as a 14 seed, and we have Alabama in our Final Four for the second year in a row. And like I mentioned at the beginning of doing this region, it was going to be a fun region. There's a lot of upset potential. I think Texas Tech and Illinois could both at least keep it close, have potential to knock off Alabama there. I really like Bradley over Memphis in that matchup. I actually really like Charleston over Marquette. And UNC Asheville over Kansas that's the worst case scenario matchup for Kansas, and I think that they're overseeded as a 2 seed, so that was a really good opportunity there. for 15/2. I think the best I've seen so far making these bracketology predictions so far into this season. I think UNC Asheville, Kansas is your best chance at getting a 15/2 so far, because UNC Asheville is not a bad team. Let's go up to this region top right here. We got Iowa State versus Long Island. I'm going to go with Iowa State here in this one. They're too good. Curtis Jones has been underratedly so one of the best players in college basketball. I think he should actually get some mention. I know Keyshawn Gilbert was getting it a little bit for Iowa State, some mention for National Player of the Year, but I think Curtis Jones has entered himself into that, debate there. I know right now it's looking like Cooper Flagg, but I think Curtis Jones should be a top 5 National Player of the Year contender right now. Georgia versus Creighton, this would be a great matchup. I mean, Creighton has really been missing Pop Isaacs, but even though they've been missing him, they've been winning. So that's been interesting. They got a big W over UConn, but I think Georgia, they're probably the better team so far this year. I think Georgia, I'm going to take them here in that 8-9 matchup. Next up, we got Lipscomb as our 12 seed versus Wisconsin. I don't think Lipscomb's all that great. I like Wisconsin, man. I like Wisconsin. I think that they're definitely the better team there. Blackwell as a point guard, super underrated. A lot of talk about John Tungy there at Wisconsin. But Blackwell has been amazing as a guard there for them. Playmaking, getting tough buckets, getting into the lane. He's kind of a smaller point guard, super fun to watch. Give me Wisconsin. Next up, we got Ole Miss versus South Alabama. And, South Alabama, I don't think that they compete with Ole Miss. Give me Ole Miss. Chris Beard back into the tournament, up to a 4 seed now after knocking off Alabama on the road. Such a huge win. Him and Mark Adams back reunited on the coaching staff there at Ole Miss, and they got some fantastic players, so I'm going to take Ole Miss there in that one. West Virginia as our 6th seed here versus New Mexico as an 11th seed. 2 of the best point guards in the country will be clashing in this one between Javon Small and Donovan Dent. That would be a fantastic matchup. They might each put up 25 to 30 points in this game. If West Virginia does get Tucker DeVries back, I do expect them to make a little bit of a run, maybe even to the Sweet 16 or further. I am going to take West Virginia in this matchup. I think that, they're just a really good team. I think they have a point guard who can match Donovan Dent there. And with Javon Small, I think is one of the better players in the entire country. And West Virginia also has a top 15 defense that is really going to help. They have a lot of length on that team. Sincere Harris has been one of the better perimeter defenders in the country. Enardo Andre has been an insane shot blocker for this West Virginia team, and really played a much bigger role than I expected as a fan. They have a really good defense with a lot of length between Sincere Harris, Jonathan Powell, Toby Okani. That is a lot of length on the wings that you're not going to find on a lot of teams. Give me West Virginia here to move on to the second round. Oregon versus Utah Valley. Utah Valley, they can be sneaky. They've been sneaky out of their league there for the last few years, and they're a team that I could see getting into the tournament over Grand Canyon, which is in their league. So that is interesting to see there, LJ Lunardi, to see Utah Valley make it over Grand Canyon. But I am going to take Oregon. I think Dana Altman is an excellent coach. He's not going to get beat in the first round by a team like Utah Valley. He could, but I think Oregon's just really well coached. Give me Oregon there in that one. Next up, we got St. John's versus Vanderbilt. I like St. John's in this one a lot. St. John's has 3 really good guards. They got Zuby Ejiofor down low. I think they're a team that is built for March Madness to at least get a first-round win. So give me St. John's. And then we got Florida versus Bryant. I'm going to go with Florida here in that one. Next up, let's go to our round 2. Let's see what teams are going to make it to the Sweet 16 out of this region. We got Iowa State versus Georgia. I think Iowa State's too good. Top defense in the country. Top guard trio in the country between Taman Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, and Curtis Jones. And some of their other players down low are really starting to come into their own and be key contributors, like Josh Jefferson, for example, and really I think their front court is probably, their biggest hole, but they play defense and they rebound, so you can't knock on them too much. This Iowa State team is legit national championship contenders. Wisconsin versus Ole Miss, I think, would be one of the better second-round matchups in this entire bracket. I think it would be a super close game, but I'm going to take Ole Miss. Actually, no, I'm going to take Wisconsin. Sorry to fool you, Ole Miss fans, but I'm going to take Wisconsin. I really do like Blackwell and Touney. I think they're really good players, and I think about players that are built for March Madness. I think Blackwell can be a guy to really turn up. I think Touney can get it done throughout the game, and when you need him, Blackwell is going to come in, hit a big shot. I like this Wisconsin team, guys, and they have some experience down low as well in the front court, and that experience is going to play a huge role in their win over Ole Miss. Wisconsin gets back to the Sweet 16 and knock off Chris Beard. Next up, we got West Virginia versus Oregon. This would be another really fantastic matchup, and I cannot wait for March Madness, guys. Just looking at this bracket, looking at all these great matchups, it's like getting me excited for the tournament. We still got a couple months, though. We got to wait. We still got a lot of good basketball on every night, but man, I can't wait. West Virginia versus Oregon, though. Call me a homer, but I am going to go with WVU. I think that Oregon is a beatable 3 seed, especially in the second round. And I think West Virginia is just one of those teams that's built for March. I do expect Tucker DeVries to come back at some point before the tournament. That is going to be absolutely massive because Javon Small has cemented himself as one of the better players in the country. And you bring back one of the better shooters in the country in Tucker DeVries. That is going to be huge. Guys who can hit some big shots down the stretch and get it done for you. So give me West Virginia here in that one to make the Sweet 16. Next up, we got St. John's versus Florida. I think that this would be another excellent in the matchup purely because they have amazing guard play in this game. I mean, you got Kadary Richmond, you got Devion Smith, and you got can't quite think of that other guard there for St. John's. But then on Florida, you got Walter Clayton Jr., you got Elijah Martin, you got Will Richard. Some fantastic guards. I am going to go with, you know what? I kind of want to pull an upset here in this one. I kind of want to pull an upset and go with St. John's. I do think between Scott and Ejiofor down low as well, that could be the difference. But Florida is one of the better offensive and really just rebounding in general. Offensive rebounding and just rebounding in general. Florida is one of the better teams in the country. And I've really noticed that even against the better teams in the country like Kentucky. I'm going to take Florida. I'm going to take Florida. I do kind of want to take that upset because I do think St. John's can make it to the Sweet 16, but I'm going to take Florida. I think they're too good. I think their rebounding down low is going to be enough. I think Walter Clayton is really going to take over and Will Richard as well. Next up, we got Iowa State versus Wisconsin. I got to go with Iowa State. Iowa State's so good. It's really hard to pick against them before the Elite Eight, honestly. They're just that damn good. Give me the Cyclones to the Elite Eight. Next up, West Virginia versus Florida. I think West Virginia would really put up a fight against Florida, but Florida puts up a lot of points. West Virginia's defense will have to slow them down enough. I think at some point Florida's going to make a run and knock the Mountaineers out of the tournament out of the Sweet 16. And we got Iowa State versus Florida in our Elite Eight for a chance to go to the Final Four. Iowa State, Florida. This is where things get interesting. I mentioned Elijah Martin, Will Richard, and Walter Clayton for Florida, and then you got Tamin Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, and Curtis Jones on Iowa State. I think that Iowa State trio is better. The front courts are going to maybe be the key factor in this game. Who's going to play harder, out-rebound the other team, out-defend the other team, who's going to defend the paint better. I think that's the key to this game because there are so many elite guards in this game. It's going to be hard to stop the perimeter. But the paint defense and the rebounding is going to be key in this game. I'm going to take Iowa State. I think they're the more proven defense, and I really do like Iowa State as a team to get to the Final Four. So give me the Cyclones there in that one. So far we got 5-seed Texas A&M, 1-seed Iowa State, and 1-seed Alabama in the tournament. And we're heading into the Final Four, and we're heading into our final region here in the bottom left, where our top seed is the Duke Blue Devils, and they'll be going up against Quinnipiac as our 16 seed. And I am going to take Duke in that matchup. I don't see Quinnipiac giving, much of a fight there to Duke. I think Duke has been excellent against teams that are lesser competition than them this year. And Cooper Flagg is going to be on a mission. Give me the Blue Devils there to move on. Next up, we got Baylor versus Maryland. And I was so high on Baylor in the preseason. They're just not doing it for me. They're not that good. Maryland is a team that I could see getting it done over Baylor. I could see Derek Queen actually outplaying a guy like Norchadomir. So I am going to take Maryland actually there as a slight upset, 9/8 for a Duke-Maryland second-round matchup. And then we got Michigan versus George Mason. That's actually interesting. I thought about taking George Mason in this game. Michigan is a really good team. And I really do like Danny Wolf as the point big there, the point center, whatever you want to call him. He's excellent. George Mason, whoever comes out of the A-10 conference, it's kind of my role this year. Whoever comes out of the A-10 league is going to get a win in March Madness. The A-10 is so deep, so good. Whoever finds their way through the A-10 tournament is going to get a bid. And I'm going to stick to that rule of thumb right now. And I'm going to go with George Mason to get it done. They've been a fantastic team this year, super underrated in a deep league. If they can come out of the A-10, they can get it done against Michigan, 12/5. I think my second 12/5 here of this video. Next up, we got Mississippi State versus Yale. And I know Yale doesn't have Danny Wolf anymore. That would be actually an interesting matchup if Yale versus Michigan faced off in the second round. Danny Wolf against his old team. But they do have, what's his name, Polowski. I think his last name is John Polowski. A really fun player there. Yale, if they do come out of the Ivy League, there will be some entertaining games against teams like Columbia and Princeton. I could see Yale getting it done. I know Josh Hubbard hasn't been the best player in the world lately, but I do think he is going to get hot for March Madness, and I'm going to take Mississippi State here to get it done. And then we got UConn versus UC Irvine. UC Irvine has been awesome lately, and UConn hasn't been all that great. And they really need Liam McNeely back. I am rocking the UConn shirt, but I'm not rocking with UConn here in the first round. I'm going to go with UC Irvine. Super good team this year. One of the better mid-majors. A lot of hype are going to be around them heading into the tournament, and that hype could die. They could lose in the first round because sometimes the most hyped-up mid-major loses in the first round that everybody's on, and it breaks a lot of brackets. I could see that happening with UC Irvine this year, depending on their matchup, but I don't really trust UConn this year. I'm going to take UC Irvine here in this one. Then we got Michigan State versus Akron. Really good matchup for Michigan State because I don't really like anyone out of the MAC conference this year. But Akron does kind of look like the best team. They have one of my favorite players in college basketball on their team in Seth Wilson. He used to be a WVU Mountaineer. He's on the Akron Zips now. So shout out to him. I would love to see, Akron play in the tournament just because they do have two former Mountaineers in Seth Wilson and James Okonkwo. But I'm going to go with Michigan State. Sparty's been playing really good lately, and it's hard to stop Izzo in March to begin with. So whenever I like the matchup for them, I'm definitely taking Michigan State, no questions asked. Next up, we got Clemson versus San Diego State. That would be an awesome 7-10 matchups, like most 7-10 matchups are. They're going to be a close game. This one is one I could see going either way. I do really like Miles Byrd on the San Diego State team. I think I'm going to go with Clemson. I think Clemson has the guys like Ian Shefflin, Chase Hunter that I think are just going to get it done in the first round of March. Give me Clemson here in this one. Then we got Tennessee versus Southern. I'm going to go with Tennessee over Southern there in that one. Then we got Duke versus Maryland in our second round matchup. I am going to go with Duke. That's going to be a fun game there between two former high school teammates that are two star freshmen this year. Both probably going to be lottery picks in the draft between Cooper Flagg and Derek Queen, but I think Duke gets it done there. And then we got George Mason versus Mississippi State. I do think the Maryland-Duke game will be close. I think Maryland can keep that one closer than expected. I'll just say that. George Mason versus Mississippi State. I am going to take Mississippi State. I kind of want to take another double-digit team to the Sweet 16. I had Charleston in the Elite Eight. Is that the only double-digit seed I had in the Sweet 16? It is. But I think Mississippi State is a really good team, so I am going to take them there. Then we got UC Irvine versus Michigan State. I'm going to take Michigan State. I haven't seen Izzo get upset by, one of these, higher seeded mid-majors yet in March Madness, so I'm not going to pick it to happen here. I think Michigan State's playing really good. They have, they're kind of getting their production from like a whole team standpoint, rather than just a couple of players, which I like a lot, especially from a Tom Izzo team. And this could be the year they get back, close to a Final Four. So give me Michigan State there in that one. And then we got Clemson versus Tennessee. And you know what? I'm gonna pull another upset here. I'm gonna go with Clemson. I think Clemson has the team here to really compete with Tennessee. I think that they can knock them off. Tennessee, with Chaz Lehner, is a really good shooter and just a really good player overall. Zakai Ziegler is finally going to be his last year, I hope, unless he pulls another year of eligibility out of, wherever. I feel like he's been in college for 6 years or so as their point guard. But he is a really good point guard. It's tough to stop. They have a really good offense that they run there with him as the point guard. But I think Clemson has those players that can get it done. Maybe it's on a buzzer beater. Something crazy might happen. They have the magic. Give me the Clemson Tigers to move on 7/2 seed in the second round. Sweet 16 out of this region, we got Duke, Mississippi State. It's our first matchup. I am going to take the Duke Blue Devils to keep on marching. I do actually think that Mississippi State has better guard play maybe, but I think Cooper Flagg is going to be tough for them, and really these freshmen, Con Capel, the center down low for Duke. They have an excellent defense. They're going to be able to lock down Mississippi State enough to where Duke is going to make it to the Elite Eight here. And then we got Michigan State versus Clemson. I think this would be a fantastic game. Probably come down to the wire. But I am going to take Michigan State here to win and make it to the Elite Eight. And we get another fantastic Duke versus Michigan State, which has definitely happened in the past. In the Elite Eight, last time Duke was a 1 seed was that the last time they were 1 seed? I think in 2019 when they had Zion Williamson. Michigan State actually beat them to make it to the Final Four. Will we see history repeat itself? For our final Elite Eight matchup, we have Duke and Michigan State, and this will be another classic between these two programs. And I mentioned before, I think Mississippi State might have better guard play than Duke. I mean, I think Tyrese Proctor is pretty good, but Josh Hubbard is better. I think Michigan State has better guard play, and they have it as, kind of a unit better than Duke. And I do think Tom Izzo with this team is going to scheme up enough to get by this Duke defense and be able to make it back to the Final Four this year. Will this be Tom Izzo's last season if he does make it to a Final Four? Maybe. I think he has a team that he really likes a lot. They're undefeated in Big Ten play. They're sitting here as a 3 seed in a region that I think that they can compete in with anybody, and they come out of it and make it to the Final Four. Just a lot of really good guards between Adkins, Fears, who's a really good playmaker, Cohen Carr. My prediction for this Elite Eight game, Cohen Carr dunks all over Cooper Flagg, and proves that he is the best dunker in college basketball, not Cooper Flagg, and they get it done. Frankie Fielder off the bench, the transfer from Omaha in the tournament here as well. Maybe if they had Frankie Fielder, they could get to the next round, but he's on Sparty, and Sparty is rolling to the Final Four. Then we have Texas A&M, Michigan State, Iowa State, Alabama. So we have our 2 1 seeds facing each other, Iowa State and Alabama, and we have a 5 seed and a 3 seed facing each other here in the Final Four between Texas A&M and Michigan State. Let's start over here with this one, Texas A&M, Michigan State. This is one that I could really see going either way. A lot of really good guard play. I just mentioned all of Michigan State's really solid guards. And Texas A&M has some good guards as well between Wade Taylor and Phelps, who has really stepped up lately. I like both of these teams a lot. I think that obviously I like them a lot. I have them both in my Final Four. These are both teams that I think can make the Final Four as, somewhat sleepers. They're not top seeds, a 3 and a 5 seed, but teams that I think could definitely get it done. But I'm going to take Michigan State here to move on to the national championship game. I think that they are probably the better team than Texas A&M. It would be a really well-coached game between Buzz Williams and Tom Izzo. I'd love to see it, but Sparty gets back to the national championship game. Next up, we got Iowa State versus Alabama. Battle of 2 1 seeds. Taman Lipsey versus Mark Sears as the point guards. Taman Lipsey more of a playmaker. Mark Sears kind of that main guy scorer as a point guard. And then you got Keyshawn Gilbert and Curtis Jones. I think Curtis Jones is just by himself going to be such a huge part of this run by Iowa State. And Grant Nelson is really going to be that guy for Alabama. These are two teams I really do like to make deep runs. If they don't make the Final Four, I think they both make the Sweet 16 at least, probably even the Elite 8. I really do love these teams. I think it's going to be Iowa State getting it done with defense, surprising Alabama a little bit by being able to slow them down. They won't be able to stop them, but they'll be able to slow them down. I like Iowa State in this one. Curtis Jones hitting some huge shots down the stretch, and the Cyclones are in the Natty versus Michigan State. This national championship game right here would feed families for sure, because it is, 2 higher seeds, a 1 seed versus 3 seed. But it is 2 teams. Iowa State, I don't think they've ever been to a national championship game before. Michigan State hasn't been there for a while. They've been to the Final Four last time in 2019 with Cassius Winston and all them. But they haven't been to the championship in a while, and they haven't won a championship since the year 2000. So, Michigan State is a really good brand in college basketball, and they've been to quite a few Final Fours with Tom Izzo. But this would be a good matchup. You guys know what I mean. Like, it would be somewhat unexpected. Like, one of these teams is really going to win the national title this year. That would be insane. But if these 2 teams did match up, I would have to go with Iowa State. I think Iowa State has the more talented team. I do think that Tom Izzo would find some creative ways to attack that Iowa State front court, even though that front court is a pretty good defensive one. Deshaun Jackson, I think, maybe is the weakness in Iowa State, at least offensively. But I think that they have enough depth, they have enough defense to get it done, and they have the guys like Keyshawn Gilbert, Taman Lipsey, and Curtis Jones to really take this one all the way. And I like Iowa State a lot, man. I think that they have a squad that could really get it done. And I know some people say, well, usually a program, it takes a little bit. They have to make a Final Four. They have to, kind of work their way up to a national championship. I think Iowa State is at least in the Final Four this year, especially if they get into the right region. They just have such a good team. I trust them a lot. And if they get there, I think that they can win it all this year. I really do think that they can with the team that they have. Let me know what you guys think down below about this bracket. I had some pretty fun upsets, a really fun championship game and Final Four, I thought. I really like doing these, guys. Make sure you guys are on the lookout for more of these Bracketology predictions, March Madness predictions, whatever you want to call them, and much more college basketball content coming your way. So make sure you guys subscribe. We're getting closer and closer to 6,000 subscribers. Let's get there really soon before March Madness. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.